Today we are going to be discussing the book Geeky Pedagogy, a guide for intellectuals, introverts, and nerds who want to be effective teachers. And the book was written by Jessamyn Neuhaus, and it is part of a series of scholarly teaching and learning books that have been published by some well-respected leaders in the scholarship of teaching and learning. And so we'll just chat on the audio because we have a small group. Could you you can post an emoji in the chat just to represent how you're doing today, and then we'll do introductions in a little bit. We just do that to build a little bit of community in the class.
Where is the emoji?
If you go to the chat box, and then like you could put let me see, right under the box where you type, there's a little smiley face with a plus. That's an emoji. So if you click on that, you'll get a whole bunch of them. Is that popping up?
I know what they are, but I don't see any emoji here. Let's see.
Do you have the chat window open?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you see the box where it says say something, and there's not anything under that looks like an emoji. Sometimes it happens because of the size of what you have portraying on the screen. And this happens to me. I'll make the screen zoom really big, but then I won't see the things that are above or below. So it could be that if you decrease your zoom, then you'll be able to see what's above and below. And if it's not that, it could be a browser issue.
Chat
but
support, I see.
Text
at the very
support,
bottom.
okay.
I suppose that's not emojis.
So if you go at the bottom right corner of the main Blackboard Collaborate room, there's that purple tab, and you clicked on that purple tab and it opens up that Collaborate menu, Collaborate portal. So then, is that where you clicked on the little chat bubble?
Yeah, the chat thing has an X on it, and so I clicked on it, and the purple, and it...
Huh. I'm not sure what's going on there, Bill. We can check into that later if you want me to help troubleshoot.
I've seen them before, I know that, but just not today.
Well, if you have the box that says say something, you could type a colon and a right closure parentheses, and then that'll make a smile. So a colon, and then the paren that's above the 0. And if you put that there, it makes a smile.
No, I'm not.
So seems like there might be something with your chat being blocked or something. I'm happy to help you with that troubleshoot later this afternoon if you want, Bill.
Yeah, I don't see anything. Okay. Now I don't even see a box to type in.
Huh.
Why?
Do you see the screens that I'm projecting? Like, do you see the presenter slide and my face and
stuff?
I
see your picture right now.
Okay, all right. So that's coming across, and we can hear each other. So we'll just communicate.
Anyway, emojis aren't the most important thing in the world. But,
yeah. Well, I'm happy to help you with that later, Bill, if we want to see what's glitching out on that. Okay, so today we'll communicate with our microphones, and we'll be talking about the book Geeky Pedagogy. Before we get into that book, my name is Yvonne Johnson, and I work in the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning as a multimodal teaching coordinator and help faculty with integration of technology, scholarship of teaching and learning, pedagogy, andragogy, things like that. I also teach doctoral level courses in the College of Health and Human Sciences, and now I'm teaching a doctoral cohort in qualitative research techniques, and they're going to write a research proposal at the end of this class. So it's fun. And if you all would share your name, your department, answer the questions on the screen, you can just engage your microphone. So who wants to go first?
All right, I will. I'm Bill Goldenberg, and since our other guest is Chinese, my Chinese name is Jin Shan. That's
Awesome.
Goldenberg, Golden Mountain. So
Awesome.
anyway, my department is music, and I teach piano, and I teach collaboration to pianists playing with other people, other musicians, and I coordinate the piano department. What does motivation mean? It means something I love to do. I'm motivated to eat every day, for example, and I'm motivated to play the piano every day because I like the sound.
And did you have a performance this past weekend, Bill?
Yeah, I did. I performed this past weekend on Sunday.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good for you. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Bill. And Li Ping, could you share your introduction, please?
Okay, I'm from the Department of Engineering Technology, and I teach electrical engineering technology. I'm a professor at NIU, and motivation, I think it means initiative and desire.
Okay, yes, great. Great. Welcome, Li Ping. Thank you. And thank you both for sharing your backgrounds and your interests and things that motivate you, something that means is important to you. Today we're going to talk about geeks, nerds, and introverts, because the title of the book includes those terms, geeks, nerds, and introverts. We'll talk about 5 general approaches to learning about teaching, and we'll talk about instructional strategies that you can use to be effective. And workshop objectives are that you'll be able to explain why college educators should embrace their inner geek, nerd, and introvert, and recognize 5 key aspects of learning and relearning how to be an effective teacher, and then discuss instructional strategies that can be effective for geeks and nerds. And the book that we're talking about is the Geeky Pedagogy, and begins with the discussion of characteristics of people who gravitate toward higher education. And the author posits that introverts, geeks, and nerds often gravitate toward higher education. And we're going to talk about how to embrace those characteristics and how we can be effective in teaching and learning. And the book has a focus on 5 key areas, and we'll talk about each one of those in an instructional practice, and then we'll have you all consider how these things apply to your electrical engineering and music. So when we talk about introverts are people who get their energy from, it's an inner type of energy. Their energy is replaced when they are usually solitary. And so if they're in big crowds, the energy is kind of draining from them, and then they go to be more private, and then they recharge their batteries. And so introverts tend to gravitate toward higher education. And book it's based on evidence-based multidisciplinary research related to learning and relearning and teaching. And introverts are comfortable in their own thoughts. And introverts are really effective at studying, researching, analyzing complex information. And these talents and interests and focus that the introverts have were integral parts of their success in completion of their advanced degrees. And so intellectual introverts often gravitate toward careers in higher education. And then when we consider geeks, geeks are those people who are passionate about their topic, and their dedication and passion might eclipse other life activities. There's this subculture of enthusiasm and knowledge and skills, and they're appreciated for their depth of knowledge and advanced skills and enthusiasm, and that's considered a higher priority than things such as maybe the current fashion or popularity in the general population or something like that. And then nerds have an obsession with inane details of their interests, and they're interested in strange, specific information. They'll just keep digging and digging and digging and identifying these unique aspects of their discipline that are interesting to them. And today we're going to consider why these characteristics and preferences are going to be, how we can use them, how we can embrace them in our teaching in higher education. And so I want to ask, does being an expert in our field make us an effective teacher? What do you all think?
It's not the only thing, but it's important.
Okay. Yep. It's important, but it's not the only thing. Yep. What do you
I
think,
agree.
Li-Ping? You agree? Okay. Okay. So in higher education, we're experts in our respective fields. All of us are. And but as you both said, that doesn't necessarily translate into being an effective teacher. And what we want to do is embrace our characteristics, our strengths, our depth of knowledge, and then build upon that and make connections integrated with effective teaching practices so that we can help students learn. And so one of the challenges of being an introvert is that introverts are not as comfortable in large crowds. And we're often in the social and emotional aspects of teaching. We're required to engage in front of a class and engage with students and things like that. And we might be uncomfortable with that. So we need to work at that. And geeks are experts in their fields. And sometimes people get so knowledgeable about their topic. And this is common in higher education, that people are just steeped in knowledge about a certain topic. And it could have been a long time before since they had been a novice in the field. And sometimes geeks or experts, we forget what it was like when we were a novice, when we were first learning this information about electrical engineering, circuits, or piano, and way back when, your first introduction. And teaching with me, these things, we've been building this knowledge, skills, and competency for years, decades. We'll build it our entire life. And sometimes the way we speak about it doesn't connect with a novice level learner who's just starting to enter the field. So there could be a disconnect there. And one of the things that the author suggests is that geeks there's this expert blind spot that hampers, that can hamper student learning. So we need to be aware that we have this expertise and that these things that are happening in our brains when we get new information, when we assimilate it with this complicated web of neural pathways that we already have, and we gracefully navigate this learning and relearning about our discipline. But that doesn't mean we're effectively communicating it with those novices. And then when I said neural pathways, that's an important aspect of this because we are literally wired with this knowledge in our disciplines. And the nerds are very enthusiastic about learning. They're great students. You know, we're great students. Some nerds didn't necessarily get good grades, but if they decided to focus their time on something, then they were usually successful. And, you know, they just keep going on and getting more education. So then we want to think about how can we capitalize on this, on being a nerd and a geek. Okay, so some of those characteristics, we're excited about lifelong learning, have extensive current knowledge of the discipline. We generate new research and scholarship in our discipline, and our excitement can be contagious. And I'll never forget, I had a statistics professor when I think I was in my master's program at the time, and this person was so enthusiastic. I think that he could have convinced anybody that statistics was awesome. I mean, it just permeated the entire room, and so people were engaged, and so that's good. And we're excited about lifelong learning. And so when students see our excitement and that we want to continue to be current in the field and learn about all these unique aspects, then that can help to enhance their motivation to learn as well. And the author talks about 5 approaches to learning about teaching. And the 5 approaches to learning about teaching are categorized as awareness, preparation, reflection, support, and practice. And we'll talk about each one of these areas, and we'll talk about how you can use instructional strategies to be effective in these 5 areas that are important for teaching. And there's been increasing emphasis on mindfulness in society. It's become more of a mainstream topic, and I think since we had the pandemic, it was talked about even more. And part of mindfulness is that we attend to the present time, and that we want to know our identity. So we want to know, okay, we have these advanced degrees, we're very curious and inquisitive about important aspects of learning. You need to also be, you need to realize that students might not be as curious or inquisitive about the subject as we are. And so when you're in the classroom, it's important that your identity as a professor, you need to realize that you have to keep in mind how the students are reacting and watch their cues to see if maybe you need to adjust something because you're seeing a lot of faces that look confused, or maybe you need to provide some more examples in Blackboard. But it's important to be aware that, okay, you're the professor, you're the expert, and you're also the teacher and the supporter of students' learning. You're going to guide them along that pathway to learning the material. Be aware of how you're gender, race, national origin, sexual orientation, and other identities can impact the classroom dynamic. And understand your instructional privileges, and seek to build an inclusive, fair, and equitable environment where all students have a voice. And that's important in it. Thinking about what your identity is as a professor. And then remind students that learning is hard. When students struggle as we continue to provide more complex information in our classes, they're struggling, and remind them that with growth and progress, there's struggle. They're saying about growing pains. That's because, there's going to be some discomfort, and then you move to the next level of understanding. And so it's important that they understand, okay, you're new at this subject, you're new at piano, or you're new at electrical engineering, or you're new at research. And so they need to realize that there are going to be struggles. If there's not struggles, then they're probably not advancing themselves as much. And we were talking about the neural pathways. When we learn something new, we literally create new neural pathways, and that takes time. And students need to know that there's going to be repeated attempts that they need to engage in, that they're going to make mistakes. There could be failures in here, but we want to embrace that, because that's all part of that whole teaching and learning process. And I was thinking about when I learned to ride a bicycle. I was a small child. And so my dad said, okay, Yvonne, today we're going to learn how to ride a bike. So he got me this big, it was a large bicycle. And I said, Dad, do you think I can fit on that? He said, sure. So, he showed me how to do it. And so I just, all day long, I just kept getting on the bike, falling off, getting up, falling off, getting up, falling off. And then by the end of the day, I was able to ride without falling from the house to the driveway and back. But in that context, I was practicing, I was repeated. He'd give me feedback in the process. Okay, try this, and, I'd fall off, and he'd say, no, that's okay. Just get up, and you'll be all right. You're giving encouraging support and things like that. And so that's a simple example, but it does fit with the learning process. And we are so steeped in our knowledge that we don't even realize sometimes the steps and processes, all the information that had to go into where we got to this point. We just really understand this, but forgotten about the however many years before that we developed this knowledge. And it's important to share that with students, because if, let's say you had a high school student who was a straight A student, did great in high school, and they come to college and they're saying, I'm not doing that well. Okay, do I have okay. Or did somebody raise their hand? No, okay.
I just entered something in the chat box.
Okay, because you know what? It's not showing up. All right, there you go. That's great. Way to go. Okay, great job, Bill. There you go. It's awesome. All right. Congratulations. That's awesome. We like to see those smiles.
Okay, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you. See, that's good. Good for you. And then, so the student comes from high school. Let's say they were straight A student. They come into college, they think, this is going to be a breeze. I know how to learn all this stuff. And they get into classes and they're different. And the student doesn't understand everything as quickly, or maybe they really are confused about certain things. And if they don't understand that learning takes practice and it's hard and there's going to be failures and things, instead of trying, like Bill he tried different things and he figured it out. So he is a success. So thank you, Bill, for bringing in an application to this workshop.
I'm the evidence.
But there you go, evidence-based. But if they don't understand that, they may just say, you know what, I can't do this. I can't do the subject. I'm just going to, stop studying. I'll retreat from the class, or, and I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not smart enough, things like that. That's why it's important to bring that into the class. And knowing your students, you could take maybe a baseline knowledge assessment at the beginning of the semester to identify where they are in terms of content you're going to be exploring, and then you can build from there. Explain to them the course goals, and keep in mind that if a student thinks they know your subject, maybe they came from high school or a different school or something, and they have some knowledge about the subject, but then you're teaching maybe a different philosophy or different approaches. And so they have to think about their understanding of the subject matter and then reconcile how does that fit with yours, what you're explaining. It's different. And if you're creating, you might have to retrain them, and that would involve rearrange, they're going to have to practice and learn, and they're going to have to develop new neural pathways. And so this all takes time, but explaining it to students is going to be keeping them engaged. And then knowing yourself. If you're an introvert, you practice different ways to engage with students. You can engage maybe one-on-one, create activities where you connect one-on-one or with pairs or small groups, and continue to build your comfort until you'll build confidence in dealing with larger groups. And the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, we're happy to help you with these things. So you can contact me. Our team is happy to help you with that. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to look at some points about how learning works. There's a fairly prominent book titled How Learning Works, and the author took some excerpts from that book, and she's put them into these different topics. And so be aware, students' prior knowledge, it can help or it can hinder learning. If they learn something incorrectly, then you're going to have to break down those, that incorrect and get them to learn it correctly. And when we're working with students, it's important that we keep our dialogue with them and in our own heads positive. For example, maybe I would say something like, my students are struggling with this concept of the course, or my students are struggling with time management. But that's different than saying, they're lazy and they don't want to put in work and they procrastinate. So we want to make sure that when students are learning, that we have a positive dialogue with them and help them understand how their prior knowledge can connect with this new knowledge, and or it might need to be relearned because they learned something incorrectly. But building that positive dialogue in our minds and with students' interactions is going to go a long way in terms of building a positive classroom environment. And that's really important for learning. And developing the mastery, students acquire the skills and practice with integrating them. So when you're teaching them, integrate this practice and repeated activities as part of the course, and then they're learning and relearning and stronger and more efficient at that knowledge and skills. And set goals. If you have goal-directed practice and then So there's a goal that you want them to achieve a certain level of knowledge or proficiency by a certain time. And so you have them do activities, you give lectures, and you provide feedback on their assignments. And then that's going to enhance their quality of learning. And as I said, the campus climate really is a strong factor in supporting students' level of development. If there's a positive campus, positive course climate, then it's better for students' learning. And helping students to become self-directed learners is important, because you can teach them how to kind of gauge their learning, gauge a project, and then the next time or few times down the road, then you can say, okay, now it's time for you all. You've practiced this monitoring. I've shown you how to monitor your progress on a certain electrical engineering process. Now I expect you to apply these techniques in a self-directed way and monitor yourselves. And then they adjust. And so, but we can scaffold and build those supports into our classes. And preparation is another area that Jessamyn Neuhaus, the author, talks about. And preparing to be a professor, thinking about the course design. What do you want the students to know at the end of the class, and how are you going to get there? And build in student-teacher interactions. Content knowledge of courses is important, but it's not sufficient. As both of you said, it's not sufficient for a teacher's success. It also, one of the other factors is relationships with the students. They're really important. The students will, if they see that you're open and available to supporting them, they're more likely to ask questions. But if they feel that you're not approachable, then they're less likely to ask questions. And so professors need to consciously and deliberately prepare to communicate clearly. So you're going to teach a certain topic, design that daily class lecture and activities deliberately, and think about it and make it clear. And in terms of the syllabus, we don't want to procrastinate. So, try to get that out to students maybe a week ahead of time, if possible, ahead of the class, because then it helps them to prepare and kind of be ready in several ways for your class. And you can have a syllabus. Start it with what you want students to learn and why it's important. You can have a short narrative in there about why this topic is important. And because it's important that students realize the value of the information that you're sharing, the value of the topic. And use an encouraging tone in the syllabus. That's really important. If it's very authoritative and sounds like a very directive, then that kind of sets a tone of not being approachable. So be cognizant of that. And then preparing students, preparing to assess students. Well, you have identified these course objectives, and you've developed a syllabus, and you have these course activities. You want to figure out how you're going to assess their knowledge and skills. And so share with students what the learning objectives are, and then think carefully about how you're going to assess it, and include those formative assessments. And formative assessments would be those that they're low stakes assessments while the students are learning. And for instance, the bicycle example, I got some low stakes assessment. Okay, try to ride down to the end of the driveway. Okay, so I got a few feet, and then the next time, okay, so I got a few more feet. And so each time I was getting feedback. And then at the end, I was supposed to show, okay, I can ride all the way down from the house to the end of the driveway and back without falling. And so in that process, whatever it's an electrical engineering project or piano performance, there will be feedback as they're learning. That's formative assessments. And when you're giving that to students, give them actionable comments. If you say you need to work on this particular aspect of the engineering, electrical engineering cycle and address XYZ, and then they know, okay, oh, I need that. I need to address this specifically. If the comments are vague, then they don't know what to do to improve. So make the comments and feedback actionable. And the first day of class is really important because it provides the foundation for the rest of the class. And so think about what you're going to do, design that class as you design every class, but the first day of class, think, okay, what do we really need to do in this? What kind of tone do I want to set for the class? How am I going to share the syllabus with them? If you spend the entire time in the first day of class talking about the syllabus, then there have been some missed opportunities in terms of building classroom climate and interactions and relationships with students. You might, to make sure that they understand the key aspects of the syllabus, maybe the due dates, the grading scale, whatever you think are the key aspects, you might do a short quiz, and then you could have, after they've read it, maybe you give that the next session or have it on Blackboard or something, and then you can spend time building relationships and building that climate in the class that is really important for student learning. And they can see you're approachable and you're kind and helpful. And then prepare for each class meeting. So each time you meet with the class, there should be a plan for your activities, a clear start, a clear end, so that students know, okay, every time I walk into this class, there's going to be some kind of a topic on the projector about what we're going to discuss today. Every time we leave class, 5 minutes before, we do a quick 1-minute paper that says, what did you learn today? What are you still confused about? So they get into this rhythm, and so they're more comfortable and they'll be more productive in classes. And then prepare for conflicts. Conflicts can arise. Sometimes they arise because students are they don't understand the expectations in the class, or they're confused about the grading policy or something. And research shows that the most productive way for faculty to handle conflicts with students depends first and foremost on the faculty member's ability to communicate with the students. Respecting the students and civilly discussing these disagreements is important, and not dismissing students. It's important to listen attentively to them and seek a solution. And if you need help from some other campus support, that's available as well. But carefully explaining the policies and at the beginning of the semester and involving students in development of classroom norms can help avoid conflicts because they know what the expectations are at the beginning, and they've had a vested interest in developing the norms because their voice was shared in that process. And that can go a long way in helping to avoid conflicts in the classroom. And reflection is another aspect that Jessamyn Neuhaus talks about. Stephen Brookfield had this quote in one of his writings is, reflective teaching, the sustained and intentional process of identifying and checking the validity of our teaching assumptions. And there's a lot of research available about teaching and learning and effective practices. And one of the things that Neuhaus talks about is student evaluations of teaching. And that can be difficult if it's one of the few ways that you get feedback on your teaching. And so us as geeks and nerds, we're used to getting high grades. And so if we get some feedback that's not as positive, on our evaluations, then, then we have to process that and figure out how to handle that. And so talk about some ways to kind of head that off. With that, I talked a little bit about the expert blind spot earlier, and that's a really important reason why we need to be reflective in our teaching, because we have that expert mindset, and we need to think about how to convey the content and create activities and assignments that are going to build students' novice skills through more advanced skills. And an effective college teacher is reflecting and collecting data ongoing throughout the class, the semester, throughout their career. And so that awareness, that constant awareness is key to becoming and sustaining being an effective teacher. And if we're introverts, then students' perception of introvert, it could be that they think the person is not approachable, when really the person is just uncomfortable with a group. And so, as I mentioned, you can set up activities where you have engagement. You intentionally engage with smaller groups of students or individual students, and that can help to build those connections, which are really important because you want to be seen as approachable and supportive in the classroom. And when you're a reflective teacher, you take deliberate actions to try to collect information about your teaching and make intentional revisions and adaptations that are focused on improvement. And so when you read those end of the semester evaluations and reflect on them, you might discuss them with a colleague who's been teaching for a while, or you might discuss them with somebody from our team who's an expert in teaching and learning. And we can help you analyze those. Also collect feedback for your teaching in as many different sources as you can, ongoing. So you can collect it through short 1-minute papers at the end of class. You can say, so if you used a certain technique in class, you can say, how did that team-based, how did that activity on electrical circuits work? And you know what technique you used. Did you understand it? Was it effective for your learning? And they say, oh yeah, that was great. Maybe one person said they were confused, but most of the people said that it worked really well. So you're getting some positive feedback. Then maybe on the road, you're teaching a different concept, which students typically struggle with. And you do one of those 1-minute papers asking for feedback. And they say, you know what, we really don't get this. We need some more help with this. And that sometimes happens in my qualitative research class during the data analysis phase, because they are analyzing interviews and words and perspectives from people. And so that it takes a while to develop those skills and practice. So I integrate practice and feedback and gradually scaffold their skills from novice to expert. And that helps with the opportunities for me to give them feedback, and then they can give me feedback. Said, okay, I need some more help with this data analysis part. When you're collecting that ongoing feedback, you could have some people have these short Teams meetings with their students, just maybe 5 minutes, touch base, connect with them. You can have the interactions with Flipgrid is a fun way to connect with students and get kind of build that learning community. And then practicing gratitude also helps to, sometimes we have some sort of an event, a class, a course, presentation, something, and 9,000 things went right. But that one thing that went wrong, it just sticks out in your head. And so you really need to step back and focus on all the things that went right and not just ruminate over that one thing or two things that, I mean, it wasn't a disaster, but they didn't go as well as they could have. But, that's just life. You need to keep it in perspective, so that you're not overly hard on yourself, in terms of how teaching is going. And then support, that's another important aspect of this, the 5 factors of this book. And we have lots of support available. The Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning is available for you, and peers can be available to support you. Mentors, maybe there's some mentors in your field, in your department. A community of practice. It's important to realize that teaching and learning, that you can do this in groups. There are communities of practice, and it doesn't have to be a solitary activity. You can join a community of practice about teaching piano, or teaching electrical engineering, or teaching qualitative research. I'm in a very, very active Facebook group on qualitative research. There's thousands of people in it, and they're leading scholars in the field. And it's amazing what we share in that group. It's a wonderful community of practice. So you can get support, and you can put questions in there, and you get all these people's answers. It's wonderful. And there's also journals, lots of scholarship on teaching and learning, conferences, and we have information on that as well. But you don't have to just come up with all this on your own. There's a lot of support, and I would encourage you to take advantage of that support. And then the last part of this is, sorry about that, it transposed, I guess, when it was converting. That's the importance of practice. And so we teach students that they need to practice. We scaffold their learning. Making mistakes, it's hard. It's the same thing for us. We have to practice. We have to reflect on that practice. How is it going? How are our skills developing? And maybe just focus on one aspect. Maybe you want to focus on building relationships with students. So figure out ways to do that, do some research, try, and then revise your techniques. And then when you get comfortable with that, then say, okay, I need to build engagement to my, and work on that. And realize teaching is hard, and you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and we need to embrace them as opportunities for us to learn and to grow. And the saying about the tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And so, have students involved in that teaching and learning process, and you be involved in your professional development with developing effective teaching skills. And it's just realize that it's an ongoing practice that will last throughout your career and lifetime. And those are the 5 areas that Jessamyn Neuhaus talks about in the book Geeky Pedagogy, a guide for intellectuals, introverts, and nerds who want to become effective teachers. And so we can see that. Go ahead, Bill. Do you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Maybe do anything, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was some other background noise. Sorry. So yes, but you can contact me, or you can contact the CITL team. And I thank you for joining our workshop. So do you have any last thoughts about this whole introvert, geek, nerd premise that the author talks about?
I think this is an interesting book. I think our library has an electronic copy of that book.
That is correct, and I'm glad you brought that up. Our library does have an electronic copy of the book. Thank you so much, Li Ping, for bringing that up. Yes, so you can read the whole thing online.
Yeah, I will be interested to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Great.
think it brought an important point that the students are not at the same level. They are novice. They are just starting to learn the topic, and then we forgot about what it was like when we just started to learn it. It was a struggle. It can be a struggle also. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm trying to improve my teaching skill and make my class more adaptive to the students and make it more interesting to them. Sometimes electrical engineering, it can be hard and it can be even boring. And sometimes we talk about formulas and circuit analysis, especially when it goes into uh, the basics, and so it involves a lot of analytical skills and math. So I'm trying to see how I can involve my students to make them more engaged in the class.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. Yes, that's terrific. Good for you. Good
Thank you.
for you. You're welcome. Bill, any last insights from you?
Yeah, I agree with Li Ping, and also I think the description suits me perfectly as far as geeky and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
introverted and all that sort of stuff. That was a good description of me. So I think the principles apply very well.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I'm an introvert. And I know sometimes we talk about a topic and then you look at somebody and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting too nerdy about this. Yes, great. Okay, well, thank you both for engaging today and contact us. We're happy to help. And I wish you all the best for the remaining weeks of the semester. Um, we just have, 3-4 weeks left. So yeah, it's gone fast. All right. Well, thank you and get a hold of me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Okay,
Thank
you
you
very
very